Welcome back to the PFC podcast. The views and opinions you are about to hear are the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of anyone else. Now on to the podcast.
Welcome back to the PFC podcast. This is Dennis, and today I am with Chris. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Dennis?
I'm doing very well. And the reason why I asked you on, Chris, you've taught me a lot about audio and audio production. And today's topic is how to start a podcast. And you're the only person I've ever known that is able to actually make a living on it. So I thought you'd be the perfect guy to do it. If you wouldn't mind just doing just a real quick introduction of yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm an audio engineer and a podcast producer. I have a school called Podcast Engineering School where I teach audio production. Although I've kind of sunset the school. I may reopen it. I'm not sure. But yeah, I've hosted many different shows. And right now I'm focusing on hosting a show called Fractal Bitcoin, which is about basically daily news around Bitcoin and fiat currencies. And also I'm doing some live meditation sessions online at Lightness Meditation. So that's what I'm doing these days.
Nice. So just kind of kicking off, when I was finally asked to do the Prolonged Field Care podcast, one of the biggest hurdles I had to get over was just kind of the fear of kind of the responsibility. Like, am I the right person? I'm not an actual doctor, even though I told everybody I was. I'm not a PA. I'm not a nurse practitioner. I'm not really anything other than a medic. Is that like a common feeling when kind of confronted, or just the first thought of doing a podcast?
Well, I think people have their own take on it, right? Some people, like me, for instance, when I started, I just jumped right in because I have I'm sort of an outgoing person, and I was sort of doing it for fun, and I thought it was cool. And I'm like, hey, I'm just going to do it and have fun. Other people, they might be more shy and reserved and things. And so, yeah. And some people, maybe if they're not like the top world expert in their field, maybe they feel inadequate, but that's kind of not a correct way to view it, because a podcast is it's like anything. It's like social media or a blog. You can just share your opinion. You can discuss topics. You don't have to be an expert. You can just have a nice discussion. In fact, some of the best podcasts are when the host is not the expert and they're learning from their guest, right? Those are a very good dynamic of an interview. So yeah, people come at podcasting from different angles. And so ultimately, when I talk to people, because I produced podcasts for clients for many years in terms of being a producer and an engineer. And really, it starts with the purpose. Like, why are you having a podcast? Is it just for fun? Is it just something you want to talk about? You want to get the message out? Or are you looking to make money? So if you're very clear at the beginning of why you're doing it, that'll help for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then I think just kind of getting over yourself, like, just because you open a podcast does not mean like the entire world is going to just fall in line and blindly follow everything you say. If anybody has just a little bit of an ounce of independence, they're at least going to Google something that you said before they go ahead and just do it, whether that be medical things or like the Bitcoin, just like throw their, all their hard-earned money into something,
Yeah, and that's it. It's just conversation. And what I've found also is podcasts are the best podcasts are just real conversations. They're not scripted. They're not highly edited. I mean, there's a reason Joe Rogan's show is the biggest podcast ever, because he just hangs out and has fun and talks about stuff they're interested in. So that's it. That's the core of podcasting. And when I say that's it, I mean, that's what resonates with the listener. When the listener feels like they're a fly on the wall, when a listener feels like you're their buddy and you're just sitting down having coffee or having a beer, like that's the listener, they feel that. And so they love that. So, podcasts who are really, about making money and, trying to get a big audience and trying to stuff as many commercials in so they earn a lot of money. Like those people feel that, right? Like, I mean, I don't know about you, but personally, if I'm listening to a podcast, I hate commercials. I can't stand it. It's just so out of place. And so I just fast forward them all, obviously.
Yep.
Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The only time probably I would imagine anybody's listening to the commercials is because their hands are stuck on the wheel, But, like you mentioned, it's just a conversation, one person is having with another one. And I think that's probably the core of any good podcast is just an honest discussion with honest questions. Because like I can absolutely hear, especially when things are scripted out and you can tell one person, like you can absolutely hear one person is reading, one side or the other of the conversation. And like this whole thing is completely scripted, which instantly feels fake. You mentioned like Joe Rogan, like that is clearly none of it is scripted. Maybe there's some questions given to the interviewee beforehand, just so he's quasi prepared, but that is 100% a conversation. And if you can keep that, I think then everything that comes out just kind of resonates as true.
For sure. And I also want to just mention that there's a different type of podcast that is highly produced. And those are like almost like a documentary style podcast. And usually they're multiple episodes and those are highly produced. They do interviews with people. They edit everything together. There's music in the background fading in and out. Like those highly produced ones, like, Serial it's 10 years ago now since Serial came out. Can you believe that? But like a podcast like that is highly produced. That most of that is scripted, meaning the studio recordings. Like when they're on location, they're just talking and being natural. But anyway, a lot of it's scripted, but it's so well produced and they're telling such a compelling story. That's like a separate type of podcast. That's almost like a radio drama, highly produced podcast. What we're talking about, just an honest conversation. That's just like people hanging out, chatting, or an interview for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you keep like a general timeline? Like, hey, my podcasts are 10 minutes long or, 20 minutes, or is it kind of dictated by time or is it dictated by just the length of the conversation?
I start with the idea, like for instance, for my podcast engineering show, I would aim for about 45 minutes to an hour. And sometimes it would go over, but in my experience, some people, when they start a podcast, they're like, ooh, I'm going to do 20-minute episodes. And they're going to be interviews, but they're going to be quick interviews. And let me tell you something. It is really hard to do a 20-minute interview. And you have to actually coach the guest a lot because they can't talk that much. They have to answer in about 30. They have to answer every question very quickly, almost like they're on a newscast.
News show,
like if you're on. Yeah. So people think shorter is easier. It's not. Longer is easier when you just let it go. But there's a happy medium that I found for myself, which is maybe 45 minutes or an hour. And anything shorter than like 40 minutes, it feels very quick. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a good conversation, then yeah, it feels like no time went by at all.
Totally.
Yeah. Kind of moving on. So, you've kind of gotten over your fear. Yes, I will actually do this. Like gear wise, like where would you start?
Yeah. So a couple things about gear and audio quality first that I'd like to comment on. A lot of people who start podcasts, they don't think about audio quality at all. They just think, because it's not something normal people think about, right? I'm an audio engineer. That's the first thing I think about. Most people though, they're like, oh, I get a USB mic, plug it into my computer, and I just press record, and it's great. And anyway, it might be great, but usually it's not great because there's a lot of things you have to pay attention to make sure you capture good audio. And another thing people think, people who don't know about audio yet, is that video is more important than audio. So they probably get a good camera. If they're doing a video podcast, they get a good camera. They look good. They build a whole set behind themselves and it looks great, but then the sound is terrible. So in reality, the audio is significantly more important than the video quality, the audio quality. So that's something to keep in mind when you're first starting. Like, you don't have to spend $5,000, but you have to make sure that you produce good audio and that your listener gets to hear good audio so they can understand it, especially when they're driving or jogging, when there's a lot of background noise and they're trying to listen to your podcast. If your audio quality is garbage, they won't be able to hear your podcast. They can't hear it. They can't hear it well. Yeah. So,
yeah, I mean, think about, any YouTube video or movie or whatever that people normally watch. Like, you can have the most beautiful picture ever, but if the audio is staticky and kind of chaotic, like, you're going to change it. You're going to go somewhere else, versus you could have just like a crap picture, but very clear audio, then you can probably convince yourself like, hey, they're doing this to their video for artistic reasons, right? But as long as your audio is clear, the vast majority of people are listening to it while they're riding in your cars or working out or they're doing something else. So the majority of people are just listening to the audio anyway. Put, I would say, 80% of your effort into having good audio, nice and clear.
For sure. And so, so when you're starting out, there are several ways you can record a podcast. I mean, you can record with your phone, there's a lot of ways you can record, but I would suggest if someone is starting a podcast, first question is, are you serious about this? Are you going to do this for real? And if the answer is no, I'm just going to mess around and have fun, then guess what? It doesn't matter what microphone you get. Just get whatever, just don't worry about it. Use your phone or something. That doesn't matter. But typically people are going to say, yeah, I'm serious about it. Like, if I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to come up with a name. I'm going to come up with an idea. I'm going to have to get some sort of presence online. I'm going to have to get a media host. I'm going to have to get podcast artwork. I might want a full website. Like, if you're going to do all that, then most people take it seriously, right? So if you're going to take it seriously, then just make sure your audio is good. And so in those cases, if you really want to do a show and you want to do it well, it's actually pretty easy. You could just get like a USB microphone, just one mic, plugs right into your computer USB. And then you just have to get a stand, and then you have to have the microphone pretty close to your mouth. Like, you can see my mic right now is probably, 4 or 5 inches from my mouth. Your mic, same thing. That is the biggest thing. You got to have the mic close to your mouth, because then your voice comes in clearly, right? The other thing is you got to be in an environment that doesn't have a lot of background noise. I mean, you can't have a window open and cars going by. Like, you can't have that, right? You have to be in a quiet place. I mean, it's common sense, but again, we have to, people don't think about audio. So this is part of audio. You need very little background noise. You want to be in a quiet place. You want to have the mic close to you, and that's it. Then you just record onto your computer. There are different ways to do that, but that's really it. You can capture good audio, and then in post-production, you can process it a little bit, and it'll sound great.
Yeah. That's another thing, is just kind of, like some podcasts, Doc Rush, that I've listened to, you can hear background noise. Like, they're in a gym, they're in their car, they're outside, and it's kind of distracting. You know what I mean? So, just find a quiet place. You don't have to make a studio, but just a relatively quiet place that you can just sit down and kind of just focus on recording your thoughts.
But I will mention, though, if people do want to record on location, that maybe they want the sound of the gym in the background a little bit, or they want to be sitting in their car and hear a little bit of background noise. That's okay. You just have to make sure that whatever ambient noises you want, like people at the gym working out, you want to make sure your voice is very strong and clear, and that sound is in the background. You don't want your voice to be weak and far away, and then the background noise is really loud, because then you get lost in the background noise. So,
right. And you're gonna hate it when it comes to post-production, trying to make that kind of environment sound good. I think if you want that kind of thing, record that noise separately, get into a quiet place, record clean audio. You can always add in noise after that, and then you can control how much or how little it is.
Yeah, but definitely, even because a lot of people just want to keep it real, right? They just want to take their phone to the gym and record a 5-minute little piece. You want to do it live. You want to do it in the location and capture that background noise live. But if you have a mic or a phone, you just keep it relatively close to your mouth, and then your voice will come in clear, and you'll hear the background noise in the background. It'll work just fine. Okay.
So, just recording. Okay. We kind of talked about a little bit of cameras, microphones, a USB mic. Is there anything you need to look for?
Okay. So if you're looking for a USB mic, there are several different good ones. There's an Audio Technica that is about 100. See, they're changing all the mics. I haven't paid attention in about 6 months or a year, but yeah, just look at the reviews and get a USB mic. You can get one for $100 or $150. Very good quality. And just look at the reviews. The reviews will tell you everything. And, you don't need to spend $500 on a microphone. You can get a good one for, like I said, $100 or $150. The key is how you use it. And we already talked about that, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So,
all right, perfect. So you've recorded your audio. Now it comes time to, post-production, down to the edit. So, there's a bunch of them. You have, Audacity, which is free, which everybody loves to begin with. But then you have other kinds. You have, Audition, Reaper. I'm sure there's dozens of other ones.
Yep. Yeah. So first of all, even before we get to post-production, if your show is a monologue, then it's just you talking into your mic. Perfectly fine. A lot of people do shows like that. But if it's an interview show, then the question is, are you going to interview people in person or interview people over the internet? So if you're in person, then you're going to have a place to sit down. You're going to have 2 microphones. Each person's going to have their own mic, and you're going to record it into some sort of a portable recorder. It could be a little handheld portable digital recorder, or it could be like you have a Rodecaster Pro, something like that. You just you plug in 2 mics and you hit record. That's that. Now, if you're recording interviews online, then you're going to use something like you and I are using right now, which is Riverside. You pay, $20 a month, and then you get to connect with people, and it records audio and video at very high quality. It's way better than Zoom. It's way better than Skype. Zoom and Skype are not good. I mean, yeah, it's not good. Riverside.
Yeah. People do it. People get away with it. But you can definitely see a difference once you start using a program that's kind of designed for podcasting or, recording audio and video, for some kind of media.
Yep. So you could record it online over Riverside like we're doing, or in person. And then once you capture the audio, then the post-production begins. You're going to bring the audio into one of these applications that you just talked about: Adobe Audition, Reaper, Hindenburg Journalist Pro is another one. You could use Audacity, but that's like it's okay. It's free, but Reaper's also free. Anyway, use one of these. They call them DAWs, DAW, Digital Audio Workstation. That's what they call that software that we're talking about. It's a multi-track software. So you bring in both tracks, or 3 tracks, or 4 tracks. If you had 4 people on the podcast, you bring in 4 separate tracks, and then you do post-production. And I mean, we're not really going to get into all the details of that, but basically you're, making sure the voices are at the same volume, and you can add some effects if you want to. And then you can also do some editing. So you can clip out sections that maybe someone had to go to the bathroom for 5 minutes, and you just clip out that 5 minutes and all that. So that's editing. And so really that's post-production. Yeah.
Okay. So where would a good place to learn? Like when I started, I just binged on freaking YouTube videos, and you can get a variety of advice on that. But kind of is that even kind of a good place to start?
Yeah, for sure. Just, keep it simple. Just just keep it simple in the beginning. And you'll improve slowly as you go, but in the beginning, just keep it simple. Don't make it too hard. Just get through it, get it done, and make sure. See, here's the benefit of capturing good audio is it saves you so many headaches in post-production. So if you just have a good habit of capturing good audio, you're literally 90% done. So then in post, you just kind of level, do a couple things in post and then render it. And that's your episode. So yeah, just YouTube, anything. There's people there giving tutorials on everything. Even all this software we're talking about, every single menu, they'll go through. What does that menu option do? What does this menu option do? You can go down the rabbit hole as far as you want to go.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, just audio production wise, is there kind of an order that you go in when it comes to, cleaning up your audio? Like I change the levels first, or I denoise first, or I de-ess first, or like there's a myriad of things you can do. And definitely when you start, you have no idea whether you need to do it or not.
Yeah. So in my post-production, in my mind, and what I teach as well is, for me, there's the cleanup phase and then there's the mixing phase. And the cleanup phase, you're just going to fix anything that's wrong with the audio. Like if there's a lot of background noise, you can use a little denoise, and you just, the processor will remove some of the background noise. Like you said, if there's some plosives or sibilants, or especially plosives, you can get rid of those. Anyway, you clean up the audio. That's one thing. Then once all the audio is cleaned up, now you can mix it. And mixing is like the sweetening of it. Like you're going to use a little compression and EQ, just a little, just to make it, compression makes it sound like it's closer to the listener, makes it just more clear and close, much easier to hear. And then EQ, you can, add a little low end fullness if you want, or some high end clarity. So yeah, for me, it's the cleanup and then the mixing are the 2 phases.
Okay. Of the 2 things, which side would you pay most attention to?
Well, the cleanup is only when you need to do it. Like if you capture good audio, then you pretty much don't have to do any cleanup. Cleanup is only fixing things that went wrong in the recording. So if you record good audio, then your cleanup, you don't even need to do it. Then you just go straight to mixing. Yeah. Nice.
So, once, you've recorded it, we've put it through a DAW, and, we're at least happy with the audio. Like, this is good enough. Now, how do I put it out into the world?
Yeah, so in podcasting, there's something called a media host. And so this is where, so when you mix down your episode, you're going to mix it down to an MP3 file, right? It's a compressed audio file. That still sounds good though, but it's a smaller audio file. Now that file is what your listeners need to hear. So You could, for instance, post it on your website and have people download it from your website. But the reason podcasters don't do that is because when you put out a new episode, let's say you put it on your website, everyone downloads it at the same time. First of all, your website's going to crash. And second of all, your web server isn't going to be able to deliver all the files. So people they're going to try to listen to your podcast, and there's going to be an error, and then they're going to be frustrated. So in the podcasting space, what we call media hosting companies. These are companies where you upload your MP3 to their server, and yes, you have to pay them. Usually it's $15 or $10 a month or $20 a month, something like that. And you upload your MP3 to the media host, and then that's where people are downloading from. And they are capable of handling high volumes of downloads. So it just takes the whole download issue out of your hands. You just, they're professionals at what they do, and you just upload it to them. And then when someone wants to download your podcast, your media host serves it to them. So that's it. You said you choose a media hosting company. The one I like currently is called Captivate. It's a good media hosting company. Very good, actually. And yeah, so when you get an account with Captivate, for instance, and there are others too, Libsyn, Blueberry, there are other hosting companies. So you get an account with them, and then you set up your show. You have to tell it, the name of your show, a little description. There's a bunch of stuff you have to put in about your show. And then you just upload your audio, and then you go to the platforms that people are going to hear your show on. So Apple Podcasts is a big one. Spotify is another big one. And there are many others, but those are the two big ones, right? Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So you just get an account with both of those, and then you connect your media host to those platforms. And then every time you publish a podcast, it goes straight to Apple, straight to Spotify, and then people can just press play and listen. Works out great.
So I use Spotify for podcasters. It's free. It'll shuffle it out to Spotify and iTunes and a bunch of other places that you would want to have it available. Is there a reason why you didn't do something like that? You did Captivate instead.
Yeah, so you can use Spotify for podcasts, but the thing is, you're sort of at the mercy of Spotify. Like if they decide that they don't like your show anymore, then they could just basically cancel your show. They could just delete your show if they don't like what you say. So the beauty of podcasting, usually when you have your own media host, nobody can cancel you. I mean, let's say Apple said, "Oh, we don't like your show. We're banning your show from the Apple Store." It doesn't matter. It's just still, people could still get it from your website and everything. So it really, it just comes down to how much control you want over your own show. And most people want a lot of control. So, but if you're not saying anything crazy and you don't have to worry, then maybe Spotify for podcasters is fine. I haven't done the, comparisons in full. But yeah, people can choose that if they want to, because don't forget, when something's free, you're the product, right?
That's right. That's 100% true.
And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it as long as it's okay. But if someday you say some things they don't like and they cancel your show, then what?
Yeah.
So
then there's Rumble. All right.
Yeah. Well, Rumble is a great. Rumble is a very good platform, but that's right now Rumble's only for videos. So if you have a video podcast, you could put it up there. But you can also, by the way, just so everyone understands, if you're doing a show that's audio only, you can actually produce it in a video format, but it'll just be like a static image on the screen. Yeah. So you can, if your podcast is audio only, you still can put it up on YouTube as a video or Rumble as a video if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we did for a long time, is just have the logo, the PFC logo on there, and then you play the audio, and things kind of evolve from there. But that's a really easy way to get it out on I mean, YouTube is one of the most consumed places for media like on earth.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be everywhere. In the beginning, I should say in the beginning. I mean, once you get big, then you can decide, like, you know, for instance, Joe Rogan got the big contract with Spotify. But that's a different league, right? Just normal folks. Like, it's better to be everywhere so people can find you.
Yeah, I have not received my offer letter yet. I'm, waiting, but
might want to check your email now. Maybe it came just now.
Did it
Dennis.
just? Oh, no.
Still no. Dang it.
No, damn. Maybe tomorrow. There's probably like a dozen people listening right now. So, but, the point is, just find a place that either kind of fits what you want to do. You want to have as much control as you possibly can and keep as much control as you possibly can, and just be, aware of the good and bad about any decision with whatever website or program or piece of equipment that you're going to use. These are the attributes, and these are the maybe the downsides of it.
Yeah, and I will say because a lot of people start podcasts as sort of a marketing channel for their business. So if you're starting a podcast to sort of support your business, then you definitely want to do it right. And $20 a month for a media host is not going to break the bank if you have a legitimate business. So just keep those things in mind. In my experience, I'm always someone, even with audio production, but also with business, like if I do something, I'm going to do it right. And if I need to pay a little more, I'll pay a little more. Like with audio gear, I do that all the time. I buy expensive gear because it's great and it sounds great and it's going to last me the next 40 years. Like, for instance, I have a channel strip. It's one unit. It's one hardware unit. It has a mic preamp, a compressor, and EQ. It's $3,500 I paid for that. That's a lot, but that's a world-class audio piece of gear. And that's going to last me, like I said, 40 years. So anyway, that's my attitude. Some people go the other route. You want to go for free and stuff. That's fine. You can change things later. Usually, you can change your feed and reroute the feed. And, I recently did that with Captivate because I have a show also called The Mystic Show, which is all about meditation and spirituality. And I had it hosted somewhere else and I moved it over to Captivate, and I had never moved an RSS feed before. And back in the old days, it was a big issue, like if you didn't do it right, you'd lose everything because people are subscribed to that, the current RSS feed. So the reason you want to move it is because if you move it properly, you get to keep all your subscribers. And that's what you want to do. You can move it and lose all the subscribers, but that's now all the work you did is gone. So anyway, happily, I was able to move it over and everything worked fine. And I'm like, good. Because I got into podcasting in 2012. And back then it was completely different. Like there was almost none of what is here now. And you had to almost be more technical to even understand and think, understand things. So, but it's a lot easier now for sure. Thank God.
Are there resources? Is this something like you should probably talk to an actual audio engineer when you're planning on setting something up?
Well, there are a lot of, podcast editors. I mean, and I'm not doing it anymore, but there are people who have courses about how to start your podcast, and they sort of walk you through all the steps we just talked about. There are, probably on Udemy and these other course platforms, there's probably courses on how to start a podcast that are pretty cheap. And there are podcasts about podcasting, which talk about this stuff too. So there is a lot of information out there. And this is a good time to bring up the idea of a podcast editor, because like we've been talking about someone who wants to start their own podcast, and they're going to produce their own podcast. That's what we've been talking about. However, many people, they want to start a podcast, they want to do interviews, but they don't want to do the post-production. They don't want to set up the media host. They don't want to manage a website. So they hire a podcast editor. So the podcast editor, let's say the host of the show records an interview. They capture audio. They send that audio to a podcast editor, and the editor will do all the production, do all the everything we talked about, clean up, mixing, everything, and add music, everything, and also upload it to your media host, and also publish it if you want. So a lot of people who do podcasts, they hire a podcast editor to do all that stuff because they don't want to do it. So if you're listening and you might want to start a podcast, but you're like, I don't want to do any of that stuff. What you can do is search for a podcast editor, and probably you could definitely have a meeting with them, either a phone call or a Zoom meeting or something. And you could talk to them, and they'll talk you through the whole process of how to set up a show. I used to do it with my clients. Clients would come to me and say, oh, I want to start a podcast. I don't know anything. And I'd walk them through the whole process, and then I would help them set it up. And then every week they did a show, I would produce the audio. Yeah. Nice.
How do you know if you're getting a good one?
Just poke around, try to get reviews, try to ask other people, try to talk to some of their current clients. Yeah. But also if you on Facebook, which I'm not on anymore, thank God. There's a group called Podcast Editors Club. So Podcast Editors Club, it's run by a guy named Steve Stewart, who I know, and he produces podcasts. That's a good group. If you went into that group and said, hey, I'm looking for an editor, or you even message Steve directly and say, Steve, I know you run this group. I'm looking for a good podcast editor. I'm sure he'd be able to point you. He'll probably give you like 5 choices, and they're all good. So,
okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. When it comes to starting a podcast, what are the major hiccups people run into that can potentially make or break whether they continue doing this or not?
I'm glad you asked this because it reminded me of something I wanted to bring up. There's a term called podfading. Podfading. And what it refers to is people who start a podcast and they do like 2 or 3 episodes and then they stop. They fade away. And the reason they fade away is because it's a lot. If they're doing it all themselves, even if they have an editor, I won't say it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of work to do a podcast. Especially if you're doing it every week. Publishing an episode every week sounds easy. And it might be easy for a week or 2, but it quickly becomes a heavy task. A lot of people who start publishing once a week, they'll go to every other week, or they'll go to once a month. So what I used to tell people who, if you want to start a podcast, you have to understand this is difficult. This is hard, and it's not going to be easy. So the thing that's going to give you enough energy and passion to get you through all that is your passion for doing it, is your passion for talking about that subject. That's why a lot of people say you have to love talking. You have to love the topic and love talking about it. That has to be your passion, because getting the work done and publishing a show every week is a lot of work. And the only way you're going to stick through it and get the work done every week is if your passion is behind you. So that's a great thing to think about even before you start your podcast. It's like, do I really want to talk about this every week for the next 3 years? I mean, really, do you? You really do. Okay. And if you really do, then you'll do it.
Yep.
But a lot of people start, they have an idea, they start, and they're like, it's too much work.
Right.
So that's one thing that stops people.
Yeah. Yeah, when
probably
people
the big
ask
thing.
me at all about it, my advice I would give them is one, whatever topic, whatever thing you want to do, record 10 of them. Don't publish them yet. Then, like when I first started, we did it once a month. And I figured that would give me enough time to learn how to edit this audio down without, killing myself. So that's what we did. We did that for a couple of years. And by then, one, I had my 10, so they were already edited and we could start off on a pace. And, I could kind of pace out recording new ones before those first 10 kind of ran out. And by then you kind of got your kind of a pattern down as far as how you record it and how you edit things and how you publish things. And you've kind of worked at least some of the bugs out, if not most of the bugs out. And by then you kind of, like I said, you got your feet underneath you, and now you can kind of set off on, which is actually the fun part of like the same topic, but what subtopic within that topic do you want to talk about? And, getting your guests and all the other, because recording and editing is just it's a short period of time. It's very technical. And as far as essentially it comes down to pushing buttons, and now it's working. Now the actual work, at least to me, is like, now you actually have to talk and make something kind of interesting that hopefully somebody else finds interesting enough to follow the topic.
Yeah, that's a great point and a great strategy. And so, yeah, people who want to start a podcast, you can think about that. Maybe get 10 episodes done before you even start to publish. Yeah, and there are there's another option too of people having a co-host, right? You think, oh, yeah, I have to host a show all by myself. No, you don't. You can get a co-host, but then you got to beware. Now there's another person involved for scheduling, for this, for commitment. Maybe after 4 weeks, your co-host is like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. So you have to get a commitment up front. There's other considerations when you have a co-host, but that can also be a fun way to keep it going and keep it lively, for the long term. And one other thing I want to mention before I forget is that one of the best things about having a podcast is that you're creating content regularly, and you can sort of repurpose that content into different places, and it just gives off a lot of content. And that's something that, especially today, like businesses need, right? You need content. I mean, you can't just tweet once a day anymore, right? I mean, I do, and I get no engagement from it. But if you really want to hit it, you got to hit it, and you got to tweet. What is it now? What are people tweeting? 20 times a day, 30, 40 times a day? I don't know. But if you tweet once, no one's going to ever see. It doesn't matter. So anyway, creating content is something that a podcast will help with a lot.
Yeah, definitely. That Gary Vaynerchuk, they're talking about like 30 pieces of content like every day, on different platforms. And like that in itself can be a full-time job. It's just editing different pieces of content for whatever platform you're putting it on.
Yeah.
Multiply that out by, 20, 30, 40 pieces per platform.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add about episodes is quality over quantity. Because even if you put out one episode a month, but that episode is always really good, your listeners will love it. Whereas if you try to pump out a bunch of episodes, but they're not that great, like your listeners are going to know. So that's a big consideration when you're starting out. And also if you're doing interviews, doing a little more prep. Some people walk into interviews like almost without any prep. They're just like, oh, we're just going to have a fun chat. Yeah, you're going to have a fun chat, but you're the host. It's your show. You want to make sure that this interview is high quality. So you got to prepare and you got to have some notes, and that'll come through in the final product is my point.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever I'm going to talk to a guest, just like I did for you, hey, these are the 4 topics I'd like to talk about. And at least it gets the guest and the host kind of their mind wrapped around of this is the general kind of flow. And just like any conversation, a topic gets brought up, that can kind of take the conversation into another direction, which is 100% fine. But you have this kind of framework of like, this is kind of the flow we're trying to go down. Like we're not going to start talking about UFOs. We're going to continue talking about how to produce a podcast.
Right. Yeah, that's what I always used to tell the hosts that I worked with is that I told them, do not script everything, but just put bullet points. Just have a sheet of paper with a bunch of bullet points or maybe an outline, but a simple outline. You don't have to go like it should be very few words on the outline. Like each point should be maybe 2 or 3, 4 words. That's it. You just want something quick that you can glance at on the side, and because then you let the conversation flow naturally. And then when it's time to move to another topic, that's when you look at your notes and it's easy to just say, oh, let's talk about XYZ. It works out really well.
Nice. So other than, kind of the pace of things, what other things kind of will kill a podcast other than like, man, this is kind of work?
Well, so one thing that makes a big difference is the energy you bring to your podcast. Because, when I think about this topic about the energy that I'm bringing. Okay, that's enough. But did you hear how I just brought the entire show to a screeching halt?
Right. Did you mimic me?
So energy, it's great. I learned this. I don't even know when I learned this. I think I learned this before I was even in podcasting, because before I got into podcasting, I had written my own self-help book and I was doing personal development seminars because I love all that stuff. And there was a woman who was teaching about media training. And she says, if you ever are a guest on a show, or if you go on the radio, if you're a guest on the radio, anything, if you're a guest anywhere, she's like, the number one thing you got to do is bring the energy. That's it. You got to bring the energy. And that does not mean you need to scream and yell like a crazy person. It just means energy. You can talk at a low volume and bring lots of energy. There's different ways to bring energy, but that enthusiasm and the energy is contagious. So that is one thing that sometimes new podcasters, they don't know that. And they're just talking like, especially if you're doing a monologue and you're just sitting in a room by yourself recording a podcast and you're like, in your mind, you're like, what am I doing? And so, but anyway, bring the energy. That's the key.
Yeah. I would say caveat that don't bring fake energy, because when you're I think when somebody is overzealous and it sounds like you're trying to sell me something,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, this magic 8-ball, like people go crazy over, the accuracy of this magic 8-ball. Like, I've used this for treating my patients, and I just like, when I don't know what to do, I shake it and it's like, oh, perfect. Assess the patient. It's 100% fake. But if you are actually interested in this topic, that will 100% come through, and you will definitely bring whatever energy is natural to you, just because you finally get to talk about the thing you actually want to talk about all day.
I'm so glad you brought this up. It's authenticity. On a podcast, you have to be authentic because that is the number one thing the listeners will see through in a second. If you're being fake, they know you're being fake. Like you can't hide that. And in fact, it's the audio portion of that. It's your voice, because they did experiments on this where somebody was sort of being fake, like with video or with visuals, you can kind of fool someone. But with your voice, if you're fake with your voice, you can't, people hear it. It's a sense that humans have. They sense it. You're being fake. They know it. It's not a question. It's just, they feel it and they know it. They don't sit there and think about it and, wonder, is this podcast, they're being fake? No, you don't have to think about it. You know, it's a knowing. And so authenticity, that it goes without saying, but we do need to say it. That's why you just need to be yourself, for sure.
Yeah. And when, I don't know why they picked me out of the crowd, but somebody asked me, hey, I want to do a podcast. One, they say, I'm sorry. And, I'm not going to intrude on your guests, which the topics, even as niche as medicine is so giantly vast, like there's always room for more. Like if each individual person did their own podcast, it would still be plenty of room for everybody, because everybody's view, their specific job, but at least their point of view about medicine is 100% unique. And like you essentially, the only way to have enough would be for everybody to do this. And that's definitely not going to happen. So, there's always room for more. But one thing that they ask about is like we kind of mentioned, time. And I think instead of focusing on, hey, I want an hour long podcast or a 3 hour long podcast, I could only imagine how people would love my podcast that long. But, when it's forced, when you're artificially trying to extend out the length of a podcast or artificially trying to make it short, it kind of just throws everything off. So I think if instead of people focusing on something like that, like trying to fit this topic into a time slot, just focus on being interesting. Focus on, bringing up an interesting point of view about whatever it is you want to talk about. And that's going to go along with that authenticity, and just whatever the time period is going to be what it is. And everybody will be more than happily to follow you.
I agree. And I had a client, and many people do this, but I had a client who looked up the average commute time, which is, I believe at the time was 28 minutes. So they wanted their episodes to be around 25 minutes. Because they wanted someone to be able to get in their car, press play, commute for 28 minutes and hear the whole episode. But I agree with you. Even if it's 3 hours, if it's great, guess what? If they're going to listen to 28 minutes, guess what? They're going to be thinking all day, oh, I can't wait to get back in my car to keep listening to that episode. Then they're going to get into the car, press play again for 28 minutes. And then guess what? When they get home, they're going to listen to the podcast at home. If it's that good, right? They're not going to wait for their commute time. So quality is everything. It's not about the time. That's a remnant of radio.
Yep. Radio, TV, and you got to squish it into a time slot.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything else that you think we need to talk about?
Nothing. We've talked about a lot. Nothing is jumping to mind right now.
No, perfect. I think it's a good time to close it down then. But Chris, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate not only your advice, but coming on to this podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. I hope this was helpful. And yeah, if anybody wants to ping me with questions, I'm around.
That's it for today's podcast. Make sure to go to our website, www.prolongedfieldcare.org. check out our free downloads and a ton of other helpful information. Grab a bag of our fresh roasted PFC coffee, links in the description below, and stay on the bleeding edge of combat and austere medicine. This is Dennis for the PFC Podcast, out.